Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Carmen Davis, founder and president of Davis Strategy Group, a consulting, business services, and media production firm serving Indian country, and I'm also the publisher and executive editor of Native Business Magazine. I am honored to moderate today's exciting program, Building an Agricultural Business in Indian Country. We're going to address one of today's most crucial issues, creating innovative, robust, and ecologically sound food systems and agricultural businesses in Indigenous communities. Each of our three speakers will discuss their work in building an agricultural business in Indian country and reveal how creative development and wise stewardship of agriculture and natural resources is foundational to tribal sovereignty and success. Following the presentations, I'll moderate a conversation with these accomplished Native leaders and entrepreneurs about the opportunities, obstacles, and challenges of building thriving, sustainable businesses. We'll hear first from Mark N. Fox, chairman of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. A fierce proponent of tribal sovereignty, Chairman Fox has dedicated his administration to improving the lives of all MHA Nation members. As part of his administration's food sovereignty initiative, he is working towards sustainable food production by reallocating MHA's energy resources to power long-term greenhouse agriculture production that will not only empower MHA people, but also serves as a scalable template for future generations of greenhouse farmers across Indian country. Welcome, Chairman Fox.
Thank you very much. This is Chairman Fox of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. My name is, a traditional name is pronounced this way, Ihu Kadagi Mazesh. And that means sage man, also Jiwatud in Arikara language, meaning sage man. But it's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to talk about such a very important topic and subject area, agriculture in Indian country. And I want to say it's an honor to be able to share some of the concepts and some of the things that we're doing at MHA Nation with you at this time. So let me start out first about where we come from, the MHA Nation, what we're about. When it comes to agriculture, we're greatly experienced. And in fact, I wanted to really mention that, you know, our tribes, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara nations coming together as one, but separately and together, we have a long history of agriculture in North America for thousands and thousands of years. We were so successful in that endeavor of raising crops and growing agriculture that we were considered Aboriginal trade centers. All in North America, you have a number of major Aboriginal trade centers, and we were one of them. And that's because of our agriculture. We grew corn, beans, squash, watermelon, and other products as well. So successfully that many tribes came to our area in our trade centers, and they would trade. And this had gone on for thousands and thousands of years, major trade center as well. So that being said, you know, another significant part of how we grew our crops is we did most of our agricultural development along the rivers, the Missouri River in particular, other tributaries, but more so along the Missouri. And so that created what anthropologists call riverine tribes. We're tribes that are closely connected to the river, closely connected to its being, both economically, socially, politically, and spiritually. So a very important concept. So throughout the years, of course, we did this agriculture, but with the advent of Europeans coming into our territory, into our area, radically changes began to occur, from smallpox epidemics that wiped out 90% of our population around 1780, 81, to the first time that the United States declares war against the tribe west of the Mississippi, and that was against the Arikara in 1823. So those end up having, and that's what occurred to us as well. And so by 1851, the United States government went into a treaty with us, amongst other tribes in the Northern Plains, at Fort Laramie. We had the Laramie Treaty of 1851, which was about uh, made a determination between the United States government and MHA, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara peoples, that their territory is about 13 million acres, and that's what the landscape of what we look like. You can see a map on there, our vast territory, really touching about 4 states, and from the Black Hills to into Montana and Wyoming, and then of course in North Dakota. So that's where our territory. But I want to make the mention that our territory is much more vast than that 13 million acres. It's just by treaty. That's what they agreed to do. Okay, so now let's kind of bring us forward a little bit more. We had some flooding that went on in because of what they call the Pick Sloan program, flooding of building of dams and flooding of areas up and down the Missouri River, and we really suffered greatly. We lost a lot of our agricultural bottomlands, our ability to sell, our ability to grow crops, our ability to do all these things were greatly diminished because of this flooding. And so from that time period in the 1950s, we have struggled greatly in regards to agriculture. It sustained us for thousands of years, but now it was radically impacted. And so we've been building out of that situation since that time of that great flooding that occurred on our reservation. On the map, you'll see is what we now bring us forward now to today. In the last 10 years, we've had a significant development because we stand upon in our area a huge field, huge formation of oil and gas that lies beneath our borders. It's called the Bakken Formation. There are other names as well, Three Forks, Bird Bear. There are a number of formations that exist underneath that. But the most important point is that millions and millions of barrels are underneath, billions in fact, are underneath our feet in this area, in this it's highly productive formation area, and it's one of the highest formation areas in the whole United States. Our production on that is about nearly 300,000 barrels per day. And so this has radically changed our economy, our landscape, and everything else that we've been doing to this point. There's a lot of negativity in the beginning, 10 years ago, 11 years ago when this began. But I want to say now, because we've worked our way through it, we've made the adjustments, that it now presents great opportunities for development and what we're doing with oil and gas and the relationship to now with agriculture as well. So our membership is about 17,000 people, and these are some of the things that our reservation about now is about 1 million acres, with about half in the trust. And so as we're developing our economy, stemming off and using the catalyst of energy, oil and gas, we've created what we call a sovereignty model. It's a model that's based upon not just sitting back and leasing lands and getting some royalties and a few taxes. We're very aggressive. We believe that the economy, we need to participate in that at all levels. And so we call that the sovereignty model. And that model means that we will use every option available to try to create revenues for our nation and to use that to further develop other development, economic development. So we also believe in responsible development as well too. Responsible development meaning, how do we protect our resources? How do we protect our lands and everything else, our people, our land, our water, our air? And so that responsible development means, even though we're developing energy, oil and gas, we want to do it in such a way that 1,000 years from now, our children, grandchildren, all the children to come and our people in the far future will have an opportunity to enjoy what we have in place. So also we have, of course, a lot of huge availability of a lot of resources, and we're trying to take advantage of that. One of those in particular is about gas. When you drill into and you develop energy, oil and gas, three things come out of the ground. There's water. Water comes out of the earth, as well as oil, and then, of course, gas. And that's one of the things that has really been a big concern, because we need to capture that gas. To date, there's been a tremendously negative impacting of gas throughout the whole nation, but also in our area as well. So gas is being burned into the night. And it looks something similar to what we're talking about right now. And you'll see on these maps, these are Google Maps. North Dakota is not a heavily populated state. But if you look at the maps, these stemming back about 6 and 7 years ago, it looks like where we're at in the Bakken Formation is a huge city comparable to Minneapolis or Chicago. But that's not the population and the lights that we have. Those are flares. And so that flared gas is something that has been a challenge for us. How do we capture that? How do we get our hands around not wasting this resource? It's burned into the night because it's more expeditious for production companies, oil companies, to just pull the oil out and sell that to market. So in this process, we want to be able to capture that, put it to use, so that three things are happening. One, we get a continued development, but two, we get more royalties for landowners, for those that possess the minerals. We get paid royalties. And then number three, of course, when we capture that gas, it's more environmentally sound and safe. And that's what we're really pushing for in that regard as well, is we want to do those three things. So now what has happened, and thinking about all these things, I came across an article once in National Geographic, and that article talked about how a country, tiny country feeds the world, it said. And it was like Holland, the country of Holland in Europe, that was capturing gas, similar to what we're talking about, had an abundance of fresh water, and also have built thousands and thousands, and still stand today, of greenhouses. And so we have put ourselves in a situation where we want to do something similar to what they have done there. What one country can do, so can another. And so our mentality has always been, how do we do this exact same thing? Capture that gas, grow food, and help it support our continued sovereignty and development. And that's what we've been doing since that time. So we came back and we began to put together this food sovereignty initiative. We're capturing this gas. We're going to grow products. We're going to grow crops. We're going to get them to market, not only for more, healthier choices of the foods that we consume, not only for our own consumption, but also to export, to create an export, to enhance our economy as well too. And so this food sovereignty, we think, is going to play a big role in pushing our economy forward, and being able to raise more revenue to do other things as well. So what do we have to do? I mean, what it's going to do for us in doing that is increase the standard of living for our people. It's going to provide diversity for our economy, and it's also going to help reduce federal dependency, which I think is key for all tribal nations across the United States, that they're going to have to accept that we've got to reduce that. So in this process, we have beginning stages of development. We have, you got to get the land, you got to get the architecture together, you've got to do all the logistics, you got to have a combined heat and power machine that costs millions of dollars. You've got to do a lot of these things that will push us forward in our stages of development. You got to get infrastructure, the water, the gas lines, the compression, all these things, but we are well on our way to doing that currently. So when we do this, when we do create this, what we're calling our business, the Native Green Grow, NG2, that is the name of our business that we have obtained and are utilizing. When we put all this project together, which we're in the phases of developing very fast right now, but we're going to be able to create food sovereignty in the tribal members, capturing gas in these wells, and then converting that waste into heat and power, and then creating this production that we're looking for as well too. And also currently, So here's an example of what some of the models looking like. We're actually digging in the ground today, but these are what they call conceptual drawings of the facility itself. It's going to be the first phase is going to be 1 hectare, about 2.5 acres, and then eventually phase two will be 2 hectares. It will be nearly 5 acres of production as well. So again, what it does for us is it promotes healthy lifestyle, return to cultural roots because we come from a strong agricultural background. It's also an aggressive agriculture program. We want USDA, the commodity program. We want to be able to put our products on the shelves of Walmart and everywhere else. And so we want to take a strong lead in doing that. We also want to try to foreign trade as well. We want to do a number of these things, but it hasn't been without challenges. To be honest with you, COVID, of course, created a tremendous challenge. It really backed our calendar up, our development schedule, but we have now begun to overcome that. We're moving back forward again, and of course, technological challenges are always there. We want to make sure we do things at the highest level as possible. And of course, there's always, finance. How do you build something? This first one, this model project is going to be a little more costly than others. And then there are other things that we have to do, the logistics, the labor, the training, all these organizations. So when we open our doors, we want to hit the ground running. We want to set the tone in Indian country. All sovereigns, if you want to be a true sovereign, you have to grow your own food. You have to be able to not only feed yourself, but to export that to others. And that's our goal here. We'll have great, healthier foods to eat, but at the same time, dramatically change our economy and now no more reliance on the federal government. It's always been our goal, and we think this is a significant step in getting us there. Thank you very much for this opportunity to participate and to show you a little bit about what MHA Nation is doing. And we're really excited about what's happening and this project that we've got with greenhouses, and looking forward to really making a difference and showing Indian country that this can be done.
Thank you, Chairman Fox, for sharing the remarkable story of MHA's agricultural business your nation is creating. MHA Nation's Native Green Grow Food Sovereignty Initiative is a testament to your leadership, the legacy of Indigenous resilience, and an innovative demonstration of how tribes can deploy their natural resources along with their sovereignty and in the agricultural and food business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dawn Sherman, who brings more than 25 years of business expertise and entrepreneurial skills to her role as CEO of Native American Natural Foods, Toka Bar. A member of the Lakota, Shawnee, and Lenape tribes, she has worked to restore bison to the land, revitalize traditional foods, and innovate food systems that benefit the health and wellness of her Indigenous community, as well as the world at large. Please welcome Dawn Sherman.
Thank you, Carmen. I really appreciate that. It's absolutely an honor and a privilege to be here to talk about Toka Bar, or Native American Natural Foods. First thing, I just want to say Matakiape. Again, my name's Dawn Sherman, CEO of Native American Natural Foods. Native American Natural Foods is actually a 14-year-old business now, so I'm really excited to take over as second generation woman leadership, Native American leadership in this company. Big shoes to fill, as I always say, with the two founders, Carlene and Mark, but the mission has always stayed the same and true to who we are as a people and as a company. Our mission is to heal the people and our Mother Earth by building a company that innovates new food products based on the traditional values of Native American respect for all living things by living in balance with mind, body, and spirit. Our actual goal and what we've always set out to accomplish is to return the buffalo to the lands, lives, and economies of our people. Buffalo was our main staple traditionally, and wasna was a traditional food. The story began, as I said, 14 years ago with the founders. And that was to create the opportunity. They were both approached within the community and by the producers. We have buffalo What can we do with this? We just do not have a market. So the founders got together and had this crazy idea of saying, let's take wasna and make it into a bar, where you take buffalo and high acid fruit, and it was dried and put with the fat and stored for many, many years, that our ancestors have used for to sustain energy, to get them through winters, things such as that. So they took that idea and actually modernized it, and hence what came out of Native American Natural Foods was Toka Bar. And that actually was just not by mistake. The founders started in the community. So we had over 800 members get together and take that idea of wasna into a bar, and they came up with the name Tonka. And Tonka means the biggest thing you can ever think of, a big idea. And so they took that and ran with it, with the community being a grassroots. So that's part of, like we said, our mission and the core value of who Native American Natural Foods are, and why it started as an ag business and built forward over these 14 years. We represent a large systemic change within the food industry, and being able to get value added food and healthy foods to our people. When you look at the community, we have all the items that come with the poverty, as far as unemployment and the distance where you have to go to get groceries and healthy food. So this was definitely something that was close to people, and in a way that we understood. We took something we already knew and modernized it and ate it. So it's a great way to introduce healthy foods to your people within the communities. As we move forward and launched Toka Bar in 2007, all of a sudden, 4 years later, a category was created, and we were the creators of this category, which now you see in a lot of natural food stores and grocery stores, which is the meat and fruit bar category. So you'll see a lot of competition from us. So being the innovators of this category, we came with all those obstacles that came with it within the food industry, and having big corporations pour the money into those categories. So, we faced a lot of those adversities throughout the 14 years. And just like how we always do, we always reference back to the buffalo, because they are close to us, and they are part of our nation, our sister nation. And that was just to face the storm and continue forward, no matter what the adversity or what the obstacle was. We plowed forward. We faced every obstacle because we knew eventually we would come out of the storm. So over the years, with the competition and everything that we have, this last year, we have actually come out with a solution that, one, keeps our native spirit, two, keeps the native leadership, and three, we get to maintain our authenticity as we move forward. So those opportunities that we're speaking of, when you're talking about an agriculture business and keeping to the values of the buffalo, we can address many things. As you see here, we talk about climate change, lack of access to capital, and industry changes. So the opportunities we see are in those big categories. Climate change, when you talk about bison, they are the keystone species of this land. So when you talk about a keystone species, it goes from the ground up to the animal, all the way to the consumer, to the front. So the ecosystem that the buffalo brings back from the lands, the soil, the grass, the animals that they nurture to bring back to them, and as well as themselves. So you have a holistic regenerative model when you're talking about bison and returning them to the land. The lack of access to capital. Native American Natural Foods, or Toka Bar, as we said, faced all those adversities over these years with the big corporations and the competition, but it also brought out the opening of how hard it is to bring money into a food industry business or a regenerative model that we have here. And that is a systemic change that in Indian country we all face. We all face that adversity. So to actually have investors come into our new system here and really support what we're doing shows that we can make that change, as long, just stay adverse and you stay in front of that. And then industry changes. The industry changed for us. We had competition. It's really great to be on top when you're number one and you're the only one, but when those come in, is our opportunity as we move forward here of these next years and our growth with this is to be the innovative leader again. We are Indigenous people are the people of this land. We have the innovation. We know the practices of the land and the food and how to eat healthy. It's all there. We just want that opportunity and that platform. And that's one of the great things that we're looking forward to over these next several years, is to take over that innovation again and bring back some more of those products that you will see here over the next few years. So I'm really excited to talk about that and actually show it to everybody. Through this, as Native American Natural Foods and Toka Bar was growing over these 14 years, as you looked at the business itself, it wasn't only just enough to put a value-added product out onto the shelves and get it to your consumer. We realized the obstacles our producers were facing. How do we pull them into this? How do we bring them into the supply chain and bring value to them? So we created the Tonka ecosystem, which is a regenerative food system. So Native American Natural Foods is the brand and your value added that, we're purchasing the product and getting it out to the consumers. We also have our nonprofit, which is Tonka Fund, and they directly support our producers. So they're in there helping our producers. So Native American Natural Foods can buy the animals. And the third, we have the Tonka Resilient Ag, which is the collective of producers, which is in the beginning phases. So when we looked at a regenerative business, we had to look at it again holistically, like we always do, is how can we pull that producer into the supply chain? Because they're the ones out on the ground taking care of the animal, taking care of the lands. They're the stewards. We're here advocating for them to make sure that they're part of this circle. So that is the regenerative that we have. So this allows our producers and also give them access to capital, access to land, and access to technical assistance. So as you learn more about Tonka Bar and Native American Natural Foods, you'll hear a lot more about our full ecosystem that we're talking about to bring that producer into the circle. As we move forward, our products, they're great, fantastic products. As you talk, you'll see that it is a regenerative model. We're supplying bars, bites, and sticks out to our customers, and we're educating everybody that comes to our table and our booths, and while we're out there talking about how healthy Tonka Bar is for you. One of the bringing this model together of regenerative and Native American natural foods was to bring equity and equality, to building wealth sharing opportunities to our people and to the owners and to the partners of Native American natural foods, and getting more brands like-minded to that, to think of bringing food to our people holistically. It's not always about the cheapest route or the cheapest food to get into there. It's about how can we get that. So that's the journey that we ask everybody to join us on. And I do want to thank everybody for joining. And I appreciate this opportunity to talk about Native American natural foods. And you can find more at tonkabar.com.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman, for sharing an amazing story of vision, persistence, and innovation, sure to inspire emergent entrepreneurs throughout Indian country. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Carmen.
Our final speaker is Leonard Forestman, chairman of the Suquamish tribe. The Suquamish people continue to live in the Puget Sound area as they have for thousands of years. The name Suquamish comes from the Lushootseed term for the people of the Clearwater, clear saltwater. Chairman Forestman will describe Suquamish Nation's initiatives in developing a sustainable seafoods business, protecting the environment, and reinvigorating ancestral Northwest foodways. Welcome, Chairman Forestman.
Hakshla Carmen. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Leonard Forestman, Chairman of the Suquamish Tribe, and hello to everybody here from the Port Madison Indian Reservation, which is the home of Chief Seattle and Chief Kitsap. And I want to talk a little bit about our modern efforts to reclaim our traditional culture and lifestyle that we've known for thousands of years. And with that, we'll need to start with a little background. The Suquamish tribe, of course, has been here for thousands of years and has had a marine adaptation that began about 5,000 years ago as the sea level stabilized here in Puget Sound. And we started to see salmon and clams and other shellfish come into the area. And so our people have lived from the bounty of the sea for all this time, and we've established winter houses and in different places, including Old Man House, where the photo from the first slide shows me standing, and that's the waters that are named people the clear salt water comes from. So the salmon and other shellfish and berries and other foods and wildlife, deer, elk, all sustained us and to be able to store up enough food to have for the wintertime. And this continued on where we would go out in the summers and gather this food and trade and socialize and carry on with our traditional ceremonies, thanking the earth for all the bounty. So we had our first contact here in 1792 when George Vancouver came to Bainbridge Island, not far from here, and to Seattle. As a young boy at 6 years old, went out with his father to trade with the new explorer that came into the area. Since then, our tribe has signed the Treaty of Point Elliott. The reservation was established. A lot of our land was lost through federal land policies, and our grandparents and great-grandparents were forced into boarding schools where they lost a lot of their language and culture. And then, back in the 1970s with the Bolt decision, we started to get recognized as co-managers of our resource, and have been ever since trying to restore our way of life. One of the traditional stories that we have that was relevant is that deer was once a person, and many of the things that we see today on this earth were once people. And Toka Bar was the transformer, the changer long ago, and he came in and changed everything. And one day deer, when he was a person, was whittling on a knife, and he was tired of the changer making all these changes, so he decided he was going to kill him with this knife. And the changer found out about this, transformed himself into somebody that the deer would not recognize. And as we end later on, I'll tell you how that turned out. In this picture here, you see some of the salmon being roasted over an open fire, probably, no doubt, an alderwood fire that was probably during one of our ceremonies or canoe journeys. And of course, salmon were the very important backbone of our economy and our way of life. And in the other image, you can see some of our elders gathering cedar bark, which was extremely important textile to our people. And we used it for clothing, for rope, for fishing nets, for twine, for even herd baby diapers in the day. And so this has been a very important part of our cultural resurgence, and canoe journeys being a great part of that. And we see a lot of artists throughout our area, including here in Squamish, and of course up at my Carmen's tribe and the Mha tribe, where there's some great cedar bark hats and other artwork that's so important to our spirituality and our identity. And so those are very important that we get out and find those things in the woods too. So we have a real interplay between the uplands and our beaches and the waters of the Salish Sea. And speaking of the Salish Sea, here is one of the products that's very important to us. The gooey duck is a king clam, giant clam that grows in deep water around the Puget Sound. And our people are engaged in harvesting this clam for shipment over to markets in China. So we have a dive crew. They go out in the morning, they jump overboard, go down with a water gun, harvest the clams. Clams are brought up to the vessel, brought to the plant where people pack them, drive them to the airport, ship them overnight to China. So there's a live market, restaurant market in China that has a great market for these. So providing great jobs for our divers, and also low income for the tribe, and contribute to the trade, the U.S. trade deficit with the U.S. and Canada. So we kind of can affect that as well. We also are engaged in a oyster cultivation enterprise as part of our seafood program. We have an enterprise called Squamish Seafoods that not only manages our gooey duck operations, but also operates oyster aquaculture, where we raise oysters on some of our tidelands that we own as a tribe. And we're able to grow these oysters for a restaurant market. And because a lot of the places that that were there where oysters grew wild are gone now because of impacts of logging and pollution, et cetera, et cetera. So we're able to find places with clean water and be able to create another industry that's important to our seafood enterprise to create these oysters for our for that market. And the real challenge is trying to keep the water clean in order for us to have a clean product that can be shipped to market. And that's one of the threats that we are under as this area continues to grow. We have these problems. So we have to be very careful about how we move forward and treat the environment and our habitat as we move forward, because there was a very important belief system where we believed everything in our world was human at one time, and the transformer came and changed everything into what it is now, from human into what it is now. So the deer, the elk, the salmon were once people. So those things were changed into what they are today. So we need to have that respect. In this slide here, we have our clam digging group out there. This is a opportunity for our fisheries department to provide an area for our people to dig clams commercially. And so we bring our tribal members out here to harvest little neck clams, manila clams for another restaurant market. And this is very important to our people as they go ahead and are able to get out on the beach, which is always good for their spirit, and also gather with their friends and family, and also make a little income by being able to get out there and practice their traditional harvesting. And we continue to work really hard on trying to restore and protect these beaches. And at one time, this wasn't even legal, quote in quotation marks, according to the local authorities. And a lot of these clam diggers had to avoid prosecution by the county and the state on what they considered illegal clam digging until 1995, when the Bolt decision was applied to shellfish harvesting, and that right was adjudicated in federal court. And now we have these controlled harvests where people can continue to dig without interruption, which is, of course, very important. And in the photo on the right, you can see some herring that were harvested here last year. In the middle of the COVID-19, the creator gave us a great gift of this herring coming back for the first time in decades to our waters right here in front of our reservation. And our elder here, Tom, and his son were able to get out and harvest some of this herring for traditional use. So we're very, very happy about being able to have this resource reintroduced in our waters. And then we also have a robust traditional plants program where we get out and try to find some of those traditional medicines and foods that have been absent from our diet from many years. And we have a tribal member engaged in this, where we're going out and harvesting nettles and berries and finding different wild plants and trying to organize opportunities for our people to harvest these in groups. And it's been difficult to find these in the quantities needed. So we continue to work with landowners and with the Forest Service and other landowners in trying to give us opportunities to get out there and find these important but somewhat scarce resources. So we're very concerned about climate change and its impacts on our upland resources as well. So we'd just like to conclude with just saying that this image is from our House of Weight and Culture. We kind of call it the new old man house during the canoe journey. And you can see the sun setting there on our ancestral waters and the canoes from different tribes that have traveled here during this period, during our hosting. And very concerned about the future of our COC because it's so important for us to have an opportunity to harvest our marine resources, not only for our personal use and subsistence, but also when we're hosting ceremonies like this one, which is so important to our culture and spirituality, but also to provide those opportunities for our fishing fleet and our clam diggers to make a living, as they always had, harvesting these God-given, creator-given resources that we so much have relied upon for our traditional way of life. So with that, I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity to speak, and hope that we can work together to maintain our way of life.
Thank you, Chairman Forestman. From protecting shellfish and marine fish habitat to enhancing tribal harvest to gathering geoduck clams for overnight shipment to the Chinese market, that was a fascinating look at the business of agriculture in Indian country. So thank you, thank you. Next up, we'll have our panel discussion. Chairman Fox, CEO Sherman, and Chairman Forestman, you certainly highlighted the business of agriculture by exploring trends, innovations, and sustainability in Native communities, and how Indigenous farming practices are reinvigorating the agricultural industry as well as contributing to the economy of tribal communities. I'll start with a question for you, Chairman Fox. How does the Native Green Grow project utilize and maximize your nation's available resources, specifically in regards to water and captured gas from MHA's oil and gas operations?
I appreciate the question. Yes, very much so. As I indicated before, we're heavily involved with the development of two of our primary trust assets, and that's oil and gas. But when you are in energy development, as it stands today, oil has so much more value than gas that many of the techniques and many of the production methods right now waste gas. They burn it off so that they can maximize the value and the transmission of the oil. So what we've been trying to do is to capture that gas, because if you're burning gas into the night, like you seen on some of the Google Earth maps at night, where we're situated at in Western North Dakota, lighting up the whole countryside. When you're burning that much gas, you're really wasting a valuable trust asset. And so our goal is to capture that. And one of the primary ways in which we will capture that and then utilize it is for greenhouses. So we're going to capture that gas, compress it, put it in a status or in a position to be utilized in a major engine that generates heat and power, and then also creates carbon dioxide. So in that process, all those are things that plants need. They need sunlight, they need good earth, they need water, and of course they need carbon dioxide. So it's a perfect formula for growing agriculture indoors. And now, if you've never been to North Dakota, you have to understand it's a natural resource for us too, but it gets very darn cold up here. And so it's impossible to grow crops year long. There's a short growing season, but when we capture the ability to grow indoors, that's what we're talking about. So gas plays a major role in that. Quit wasting it. People are getting paid if we capture it. And then on top of that, we're protecting the environment and we're making use of a very valuable trust asset. So gas is very, very critical towards our Native Green Grow project, indoor project for growing production. And so the next thing that we have, of course, is an abundance of water. We are, because of Garrison Dam, Lake Sakakawea, the Missouri River, we have basically about a 25 million acre foot lake, and that's a lot of water. But that water is there, it's potable, clean water, and so it's in such availability that we'll have no problems with pulling that water in off of our current water systems that serve our domestic production. We pull that over to the greenhouse and have plenty of water. Between a combination of those two things, we're going to grow a lot of food. We're going to increase our sovereignty, enhance our sovereignty, and we're going to export goods and begin to move out more and more, developing more and more production as we go. So those are two primary resources that we have that we think fit very well. And we're not reinventing the wheel. It's been done elsewhere, overseas. As I'd mentioned before, Holland is just a premier at how to do that, and very well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will have a question for CEO Don Sherman. The buffalo is central to the story of many people. Can you share how your business originated from buffalo and what that means to native lands?
Yes, thank you, Carmen. I appreciate the question. And buffalo was central. And when we talk about buffalo in South Dakota and on the Pine Ridge Reservation to our people and across the nation, with it being a keystone species in our economy, it was just natural that, buffalo came, because that was our source of food and health and clothing and housing and all of that. So it being part of it was just, like I said earlier, it is our sister nation. Our creation story was of the buffalo. It sustained us throughout these years. So reintroducing modern food to our people was to bring that buffalo back. We need to start eating more of it, because they are the life givers. So that was really easy, but because it was from a sacred animal, why we brought the community in and brought the leaders and the tribe and the business in there to let them know, hey, we are going to make a bar out of a traditional recipe and also a sacred animal to us. What are your thoughts about it? And through ceremony and through prayer and everything, we had the support of the whole community. And they said, excuse me, as long as we treat the buffalo right and we honor the buffalo like we always have, that they would support us. So that is the foundation of where we started Toka Bar. And what that means to our lands is the regenerative, the indigenous knowledge. We're stewards of the land. We're stewards of the animals and the four-legged and the birds. And so we have a responsibility to take that and bring that back to the community and let everybody understand that buffalo is keystone to this. The whole ecology they bring back to the soil health, the ecology with the birds and the amphibians and the black-footed ferret. They have such a close relationship to that animal. We're bringing that animal back onto the lands, and then so on and so forth. It's just natural when you're bringing a keystone species back. They can actually help bring it back, those lands. So part of that is why it's so important, is to get our people back maintaining those lands the way we know how to maintain them, and the animals as stewards.
Absolutely. I mean, it's full circle. So,
yes.
Chairman Forestman, in your presentation, you mentioned that the Suquamish tribe is engaged in efforts to enhance and protect the shellfish and marine fish habitat. With regard to those efforts, what is the biggest threat you see to the continuation of your nation's traditional sources of food, and what is your tribe doing to protect them?
Well, I think a biggest threat to our shellfish and marine resources is water quality and climate change, and then also alterations to our to the landscape and to riparian zones and other physical alterations to the ecological systems that support salmon and other species. So we have been working really hard since the first Bolt decision in 1974, where we became co-managers of salmon resource, to realize that there was a lot of threats to salmon. And then after the later decision on the Rafiti decision, which adjudicated the shellfish harvesting right as well, even made it even more crucial that we work together to try to address these threats. And so not only do we manage the harvest, but we also have to manage the protection of that, the environment that supports these resources. So we engage in a lot of consultation with local and state governments on the impacts of their activities. One of the big threats, of course, is growth. The area is growing. And as more people come in, the more impacts we see on our environment and on water quality. So all that, the wastewater plants need to grow and also treat wastewater as it's released into often into the Salish Sea. So we continue to try to get the local governments to upgrade, and sometimes we have to enter into legal action and sue local governments that aren't complying with federal laws on clean water. And we've also had to, take the Navy to court and other places. But we try to avoid doing that. That's usually the last option, a last ditch effort to do that. So we usually are trying to get the agencies to get people to comply. So that's a big challenge that we have in trying to coexist with the growth that's occurring here and the impacts of that growth on our waters, on our air. And then also we have the concern about climate change, how the water is getting more acidic, which can affect shellfish like the clams and gooey duck and crab. And then also the issue of culverts, which really brought the issue of whether or not a treaty right to fish includes the treaty right to protect the ecology and the environment that supports those fish and animals, et cetera, that we've been talking about. And the Supreme Court was tied 4-4, so it preserved that ruling that the state of Washington does have to remove fish barriers from the streams, so that the tribes do have a treaty right to protect the resource as well.
Thank you, Chairman Forestman. Chairman Fox, having traveled to the Netherlands in support of the Mha Nation's Food Sovereignty Initiative, what were the biggest takeaways from that trip? And did the knowledge you gathered there help you in shaping and honing your vision for the Native Green Grow Project?
Well, absolutely. I'll address the second part of that. It had a big influence. I'm a firm believer in the old adage, what one person can do, so can another. And from that perspective, when I read about it and saw that it was occurring in Holland and Netherlands, I immediately said to myself while flying in an airplane reading that we've got all the components to do that. All we need to do is have the initiative and have the drive and have the vision to make this happen. We can do that too. And the light bulb went on, so to speak. And so I began to say, we can do that. So without reinventing the wheel, why not go to where they're having so much success? And ironically, you have a Native American instead of Europeans coming to us to interact with us for the last 200-300 years. It's us crossing the Atlantic Ocean going the other way. And we're saying, okay, what can you bring to us? What advantages can you provide to us? And they did. They showed it how it can be done remarkably so. The Dutch are renowned for their technology and their ability to make things happen that others can't do. And so we learned quite a bit from that. And now it gave us hope that this is a realistic project. And now I'm all excited because I know it's going to happen.
Absolutely. I'm excited too. Let's go to Dawn. Why was it so important to you and the founders to maintain Native ownership of Toka Bar?
Why it was so important is when you're looking at the food industry in general and where we're sitting on the shelves and how we're selling the product is not only getting it to our community but nationwide. You have a lot of big corporations that you got to deal with, and the industry is pretty dominant with the big five. And then it goes from there. So, but what we have that's different from everybody else, even our competitors, is who we are and our connection to the land, and to our animal and to the product itself. So we have the authentic, unique story. We had all the recipes for success. And it was really important as part of who we are and our core vision and our core values was we build a community around us of people that want us to succeed. It wasn't to just sell the company and flip it and make, all this money. I mean, that would be easy, right? And then drive that back into the community. But we wanted to maintain this and give everybody saying, hey, I know Toka Bar. I eat this. This came from the Pine Ridge Reservation. This came from a traditional. I know this. And so it's really important to maintain that as we go. So finding the right partners. That when we announced our investment this year to bring back our innovation, bring new products, bring new leadership, myself and the team they believed in that. So all the partners that have came involved are committed to the mission and maintaining that ownership and bringing the money back into the employees and down into the community. So that's one reason why it took so long. When you read about the story of our investment, it did take quite a bit, was because it was a model in the food industry you've never seen before. Was making sure that the investors that come in did not take a large portion and then wanted to flip it and change the mission. So they really stuck to that. And it's just an amazing, amazing story. And that's why it was so important, is because we are unique. We have that connection. It is our story. And we definitely did not want that stripped away.
Absolutely. It is our story. And, that's so important. So that's a powerful, powerful story. Chairman Forestman, do you envision growing your geoduck clam harvesting export business beyond China? Is there a strong enough available resource of clams in your tribal waters to maintain supply chain sustainability beyond providing them to only one international marketplace?
Well, the one international marketplace of China is pretty vast, so we have a lot of demand there. So we have tried to look for other markets, just because of the concern we have over the state often of U.S.-China relations, and then also issues, surrounding COVID-19, for example. The market was shut down in the early days of that and had to be reopened later. So it's somewhat fragile, both in a lot of economic, and then also in I guess you must have to say political ways. But for the most part, that's our primary market. There's a smaller domestic market in the United States. Doesn't have the demand that we have in China, but we are looking at other places we can do that. What is interesting, a lot of primarily non-tribal harvesters have started aquaculture, where they grow geoduck in a aquaculture setting, like a geoduck farm, and that helps them control the market. We haven't entered that yet because we're still committed to our wild harvest, though we've had some discussions about that. But we are concerned about sustainability, just because of the pressure that the geoduck population gets, because as you know, it's a 50-50 split between us and the state of Washington. So we're trying to maintain that harvest on a when you have state and tribal divers both competing to fill that market. We're a little concerned about that, but we hope to find ways to make the resource more sustainable.
Awesome. Thank you. As we are wrapping up today's program, I just want to ask each of you any closing thoughts, closing remarks that you would like to share. Chairman Fox, I'll go to you.
I appreciate that very much. The closing thought I would have is, because we're talking about agriculture and how it relates to the sovereignty of our tribal nations, and I would argue and put this out very vehemently that you can build infrastructure, you can export goods, you can do a number of things out there, generate your own power. Those are what sovereigns do. But one of the primary things that a sovereign does is it knows how to feed itself. And we lost that somewhere along the way. And for our own tribal nation, for thousands of years, that's what we did as part of our economy. So when you can not only feed yourself and get healthier and everything else, Now you're getting an opportunity to export goods. This is reducing federal dependency, and that's what a true sovereign is really all about. You don't depend on anybody anymore. You're feeding yourself, and you're also selling it to outside people as well. So that's very critical to sovereign development.
Absolutely. Thank you. CEO Sherman, any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Carmen. Definitely appreciate the opportunity here to speak about Tonka and with with Chairman Fox and uh, Chairman Forestman. It's been great. The closing remarks that I always close with is Mataki Oyase. We're all related, and I challenge everybody, to with this movement of food sovereignty and food. Getting rid of food insecurity is I challenge everybody to look and know where your food comes, understand where your food comes, eating seasonally and being responsible as we move forward as a group and as tribes. That's definitely what we need to do. And the movement is amazing. So I just join the movement, be a voice, be an advocate, stand strong. I see you all. I say your guys' name. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Chairman Forstman, your closing remarks.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be on this panel with esteemed leaders here, and just very excited to hear all of your initiatives. I believe that I have a saying that I don't know if I was the originator of it, but I always felt like clean water is good for the economy. And I think that sometimes people feel that the protection of our environment or habitat is a job killer, but actually, there's investments we can make in preserving our habitat and being accountable to our value systems that are good for everybody in the long term. So it's a long-term investment. Having traditional foods available for us now and in the future helps everybody, and I really hope that we can come together to do that as nations.
Thank you. Well, I feel empowered and inspired. Thank you all for those insightful answers and for participating in this important discussion today. And that concludes today's program. But before we close, I would like to thank our panelists for their powerful presentations. And for all of you who joined us, thank you for finding time and viewing today's program. I hope you've learned something valuable about building an agricultural business in Indian country and developing self-sufficient and sustainable food systems to support our people and our future generations. Thank you all.